Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And I'm not, oh God, I'm Josh Napa. I'm the broadcast engineer.
And I'm
It's going to be one of those nights, yeah.
human.
So that's right. Well, so today we're doing a quick cuts and we're just going to talk about what we've watched recently and just a couple other things that have gone on around the movie verse. So what have you seen most recently that you're just like super excited about?
There's not one on my list that I wasn't super excited about.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
well, that's
and
cool.
I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 films that we've talked about, a couple of them off podcast, but I can't remember if we've talked about them on podcast. And every
Yeah.
single one of them I was excited about. So
New
that doesn't
movies.
really
8 new movies from that came out this past year.
No. 6 that came
Okay.
out this year. One is a production of Macbeth with Patrick Stewart and The Diary of Anne Frank,
Okay.
which because of Holocaust Remembrance Day, it stuck in my brain. And I was like, well, I remember a lot of things through movies. Why not that? And
Mm-hmm.
then it was kind of twofold because remember when Sidney Poitier died and I said I watched A Patch of Blue and Shelley Winters won her first Oscar? That was misinformation. That is untrue. That was her
Mm-hmm.
second Oscar. She won her first Oscar for The Diary of Anne Frank. And
Oh.
so I misspoke on that. And I was like, have I seen that? And I was like, I can't do Schindler's List. I can't do that right now. So let me remember if I've seen this. And I started watching it. I was like, oh yeah, of course. I think I saw this in elementary school, and I remember reading the diary, and I remember reading the play. It was the very first play we worked on in college for research purposes. We didn't do a production of it, but we researched it because being raised Catholic, I know nothing about Judaism. I know more because of research, but not as much. And I was like, what? Okay, well, let me watch this again. It's daunting. I thought it was going to be like, I don't remember it being so daunting. It
Mm.
is, I mean, the subject matter uh, is tough. And she's very sweet and very Hollywood version of Anne Frank, but she does do a very good job. And the cast is superb. And apparently, George Stevens, who directed it, very famous director of the times, didn't want to do it in Cinescope. Is that what it's called? Is that what
Mm-hmm.
that's called? Where the, big, huge picture. And because of the claustrophobic um, room that they were in, or rooms, for lack
Mm-hmm.
of a better term. And so what he did was, okay, fine, I'll film it in Cinescope, although it's going
It's
against every one of,
CinemaScope.
what is it called?
CinemaScope.
CinemaScope?
Are you talking about like the ultra widescreen? CinemaScope is the super wide aspect ratio.
Right.
So
So I said it
yeah.
right the first time and didn't then said it wrong the second time. Okay. Well, anyway, so the studio insisted on he film it in that, and he didn't want to because the claustrophobic nature of the story. And what he did was had the production designer design the main room that they were in with columns that would cut the frame and make it smaller without them saying anything about how do you say it? Cinemascope. How do you say it?
CinemaScope.
CinemaScope. I don't know why I can't say that word. Um, so it was a really smart way to do it, and it's black and white, and it's daunting, and it's a beautiful film, and I think people need to watch it. So that was the first. No, not the first. I've seen a couple of other things on my list before that, but yeah.
Mm. Well, I did actually watch Tragedy of Macbeth, and I know that's probably why you watched the Patrick Stewart Macbeth, which I did do some, digging after seeing Tragedy of Macbeth. The only version of that I've ever seen is Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood. So I knew the subject matter to a certain extent, but I had never seen Macbeth. And so a lot of the, something wicked this way comes. I didn't know that was from Macbeth. I mean, there's all of these things that we hear, double, double, toil and trouble. I didn't
Out,
know.
damn spot. Yeah.
Yeah, out, damn spot. Yeah, so that I knew about the out, damn spot part, but and I knew that Lady Macbeth said it, but I wasn't sure what the context was, other than just like I said from what I'd seen in Throne of Blood. So, but I loved Tragedy of Macbeth, and it's one of those movies where if you it either speaks to you or it doesn't, as far as the set design and as far as just what Joel Coen's going for. Because if you don't like it, you know very quickly, I think, that you're going to either like it or not like it. I loved the sparse set design and just kind of just clean and empty production design, and it left no place to hide for the subject matter and for the actors. And I thought it was really, really cool, and it made it was somehow clean and dirty all together. And I know that it was shot in 4:3, and I did some digging and research and read some articles and some interviews with specifically the cinematographer Bruno Del Bonel, and he said that it was a great way to have that uh, have that frame, to fill the frame with someone's face, with an actor's face. And when you think about it, when you think back to, before there was CinemaScope, or before there was even the when it was just this, what they call Academy aspect ratio of movies, there's all of these amazing examples of the gauze on the lens, close up of the beautiful woman, and she fills the whole frame, her face fills the whole frame. Whereas once we start getting into the wider and wider aspect ratios, there can be close-ups, but they're done a little bit differently, framed a little bit differently, and you don't fill the frame with a single person's face. You can do shots with multiple people in it, or multiple people's faces in it, or you can fill up the whole frame with somebody's face by doing what Sergio Leone did in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and just have their eyes. And
Yeah, I
you
love
do
that.
all kinds of stuff with that same wide aspect ratio format, but you're still not going to get that round face in a certain single person's round face in a frame. And I was like, that does make sense. Another thing I noticed in just talking about the aspect ratio, I haven't talked about the content or the performances, but that 4:3 frame, if you look at the corners of it, they're rounded, which is kind of, it's like old photographs would have rounded corners. And so it just adds another level to the kind of vignetting of this. And it's like, this is a different world. We're taking you to a different place. And all of it looks unnatural, but the things that are happening to the characters in the movie and in Shakespeare's play are real things: jealousy and greed and all of that all feed into what Macbeth does, what his wife wants him to do, and then the repercussions thereon. And Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand, amazing. I loved both of their performances. And one thing I did want to bring up to you was Denzel Washington's breath control, because I don't ever really pay attention to that, but I also don't watch a lot of movies with Shakespeare iambic pentameter all over the place. And so there are certain lines where I'm like, he's still talking. He is still saying this line. It's multiple lines. It's like a whole stanza of words. And it seems like he says it all in one breath because the content has a flow. The text has a flow, and he's not going to break that up to breathe. And I was like, geez, that takes a lot. That has to take a lot of work. Have you had to deal with that kind of stuff where you're having to realize when to breathe and when not to breathe and
Yeah,
pay
all the
attention to
time.
that?
All the time. Never with Shakespeare. I've never done a full Shakespeare play. I'm a little embarrassed by that, and I have to change that. I'm scared of it. Let me start with, I loved it. Loved it. I was haunted by it. It's atmospheric. It's moody. It looks real and fake all at the same time. It looks like they're really outside when the fog kind of disappears, and all of a sudden you see the tent, and that happens a couple times in the film. The fog disappears and you see the castle. It looks like a set, but then when they're up in it, it feels real, like they're really in a castle. And the way he films that last fight sequence
Oh
between
yeah,
the
on the
bridge,
bridge.
yeah, amazing. It immediately does something to your psyche when you're watching that. You immediately know this is not going to end well. Of course, it's a sword
Sure.
fight, so yeah, it's not going to end well, but you just psychologically. As for dealing with your breath, you kind of have to do that no matter what the script is, whether it's Shakespeare or not. I've only done sonnets and I've only done monologues, and it does take a lot. And there is this new thing that's happening where younger actors are trying to make it so much, they're trying to make it so realistic and so natural that they're slowing things down and they're taking breaths in weird places and all that other stuff. And I actually saw Joan Plowright, Judi Dench, Maggie Smith, and I can't remember the other lady, and I think I always forget who it is. It's the goat lady from Cold Mountain. I'm sorry, no disrespect. They were talking about Shakespeare, and they said there's a middle ground where you can find the style of the poetry of the language and use it and make it real on top of that. And the thing that Denzel did was he utilized that out of breath moment at the end of that, because he kind of goes at one point.
Mm.
And he also breathes into a couple of lines as he's letting them out. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. The way he handles the beginning of that, because it's such a famous speech, I should have known that he was going to handle it brilliantly, and he did. But he handled it just like everything else. He didn't overemphasize that speech. He just spoke it. And he had an intention behind what he did. So yes, you have to know the difference between the poetry and the verse, and you have to know the difference between when the iambic pentameter works for you and against you. And it's not easy, because you can get it into your mind. There's a certain pattern, and then all of a sudden you sound like this, and you're doing everything like this. Strangely enough, what's interesting is that I might need to fact check this, but from my understanding, what I was told, and I think I remember reading about it, they figured out phonetically how people spoke in Elizabethan times versus how they speak in Europe now versus how they speak in America now. And they realized phonetically that Elizabethan speech sounded more like how we sound in Georgia here than what we think of as the English accent, the Royal Shakespeare Company. And of course, the Royal Shakespeare Company was like, oh, what? But phonetically, they were able to figure out. And if you do the speeches in a Southern dialect, it flows in the pattern like it's supposed to. And I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to embarrass myself. But when I am rehearsing something Shakespeare-wise and I can't figure it out, I will start to talk like this: to be or not to be. That is the question. And it sounds silly, but it teaches you the rhythm.
Yeah.
So enough said about that. It's difficult. I'm in fear of it. I've got to get over it. I've got to do it. I'm way too old to not have done a full Shakespeare play. I don't know why it's never happened. I just don't know why. I've been lucky. I've been fortunate to do very creative modern stuff, and I'm good with that. But back to this movie. I sometimes am blown away by how much it makes sense when it's in the hands of masters. There's not one thing Macbeth said that I didn't understand. There's not one thing that Lady Macbeth said that I didn't understand. And in particular, Frances McDormand's performance is stunning. She sounds like she's just talking normally. Even the words that I don't know what they mean, like in the to be or not to be speech, because I don't know Shakespeare I don't know Macbeth that well, but he talks about a barabatican, and you're like, what is that? It's a knife. Well, unless you know what that is, how are you supposed to know? And there's constant references to stuff that we in our time don't know about, and you have to research and figure it out, and you have to figure out without indicating as an actor, putting the knife to your neck so you're, and slicing your neck. Everybody now knows a barabatican is a knife. You have to figure out how to do it, and that's why they both have multiple Oscars, And in my opinion, I definitely think he's going to be nominated for the Oscar. I think the film production wise is going to be nominated for
Mm.
the Oscar, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
And
hopefully
everybody,
cinematography too.
right. And everybody, and we talked about this off podcast. I don't understand how people are forgetting about her. Like, I don't, she's not part of the conversation. And some people think she's a supporting character. Some people think she's the lead. In this, she's the lead female actress in the movie, no doubt about it. But I do want to say this. When I first watched it and you realize that the witches are one person,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Cohen is going to mess it up with you and do the reflections, and then that perching
Yeah.
bird thing, and the double toil and trouble is a big kind of like sauna, if you will,
Yeah.
like a wading pool. Oh my gosh. I was blown away by her, and her name is Catherine
Catherine
Hunter.
Hunter. Yep.
And I was hoping we would be able to have a conversation about this before any of the major awards came out, because I think she should be nominated for Best Supporting Actress, because not only
Wow.
does she 100% make sense out of everything, she does that weird thing where she actually has three separate voices. And then, of course, they blend them together at some points and then they echo in some places. But she sounds like three distinctive people at one point. And I'm like, how is she doing that? And lo and behold, she was nominated for the BAFTA. So somebody out there has recognized her as a Best Supporting Actress. And I'm glad, because I think that's the hardest roles in the play, because it's so cliche by this point. By the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. It's so cliche at this point. How do you get away with it? I believe that this production, this film, will be the tool that they teach students Macbeth from this point on in high schools
Mm.
all around the world, because it's so understandable. The only other thing that I noticed that was so drastically different than every other production I've ever seen, and I've seen a handful, including that Patrick Stewart one, which was excellent. This one wasn't bloody. It's considered Shakespeare's bloodiest plays, and I think there's one or two drops of blood in this film, and I think that's brave and bold for Joel Cohen not to do that, to not make it the bloody play. He does the polar opposite of what you're expecting. I think that's brave. So I loved it.
Yeah, me too. And I think if they do decide to use this to teach Macbeth, I mean, it's not only showing students or people that that you're teaching this this style of this particular play and Shakespeare, but it's also bringing in influences from. I mean, you could tell that Joel Cohen was influenced by the just where his camera placement was, and the sets and the lighting was all influenced by German expressionism from Battleship Potemkin, or I mean there's Fritz Lang, and all of these movies that came out in the late 20s and 30s that kind of set a style, and this is playing into that. I mean, the types of light, they didn't have uniform lighting. They had like single light sources and very harsh shadows, and they had the camera placement. There's multiple times the camera's like 40 feet above the action, and you're it's a wide shot, but it's doing a wide shot in that 4:3 in that square frame, and you're still getting all that information, and it's so stylistic, and it's something you just don't see very much anymore. I mean, well, you don't see black and white movies, you don't see 4:3 movies very much, unless you're Robert Eggers, but other than that, so it's
I don't think it's that as out of fashion anymore to do black and white films. It's just not. Belfast is black and white.
That Mike Mills one, Come On is black and white,
right?
So
exactly.
I mean, you're right. It's to the point now where it's a 50-50 proposition. It's like, do you want to do? I mean, Roma obviously was black and white. Then there's movies that I saw Parasite in the theater in black and white, as just a kind of a Bong Joon-ho's like, oh, this would be great in black and white, and so yeah, there's been a spate of action movies that have come out in black and white, Mad Max Fury Road and Logan. So, but I think that the fact that this movie was, and I did do research on how this movie was shot digital, but it was also shot monochromatic. Like it was shot not in, there is no frame of this movie that is in color. Like that was even shot in color. So that does a couple things. You can have cameras that do a lot better at receiving light, and they can be a lot more accurate and give you a lot more latitude in receiving light if they only have to worry about the intensity of that light versus red, green, and blue aspects of that light for each pixel. So you get a lot more latitude when you're color correcting, and they call it color correcting even though it's black and white. You still have hues that you can change. You still have parameters that you can change to make things brighter, darker, or adjust the darker parts of the frames and the lighter parts of the frames independent of each other. And that allows you to see things in the shadows while you're not blowing out the things that are, whether there's a sun in the background or something very bright or candles or something. And so all of that is, you put all that together, and it's funny because it's obviously looking back in the subject matter, and it's looking back in the format, and it's looking back in the fact that it's black and white, but it's also pushing forward the technology that's being used in making movies. So it's really cool all around.
Well, speaking of the Diary of Anne Frank earlier, George Stevens purposely shot things in shadow so people had to pay attention to what they were speaking about, that they weren't looking at her dress or the color of whatever. And he purposely did it in black and white because he could have done it in color, but he chose black and white. Obviously, the subject matter speaks to that too, and vice versa. But he wanted things, and producers and studio heads were coming to him going, it's awfully dark. All I can do is hear him. And he goes, exactly. That's exactly right. I have a question for you. How much digital enhancement, meaning CGI, it's so weird to call him Joel Cohen without saying the Cohen brothers. Like did not trip off my tongue when I just said it earlier. I was like, that sounds, am I saying his name right? Like, how can I not know this man's name? But it just doesn't.
Ethan's on a beach in Ibiza sipping a Mai Tai saying, it's okay. I think he's fine.
And who is older?
Is Joel.
Joel? Okay. So the eldest Cohen brother, because it does not trip off my tongue, Joel Cohen. And now obviously the crows and certain stuff were CGI'd. And then some of the stuff with her body, I'm not exactly sure.
I don't know.
Well, there's that one scene when all three of them turn around and they hunch over, and I'm not sure that's not, I mean, it could be the actors doing the physical thing, but like is this a dagger I see before me, and the door handle looks like a dagger? Is that CGI'd?
I think they could have enhanced that particular portion, but that was the real handle though. That was, and it was, the handle's made out of metal and the door's wood and all that. So they could have just had a light on it at the right angle that lit it up like that too. And then they also could have gone in post-production and enhanced that, just kind of cut it out and been like, all right, we need to adjust the intensity on the dagger to make it stand out more. But
fascinating.
I mean, yeah, it's, I don't think there was very much CGI at all in this movie, if any.
What about the birds?
So the birds, yes, and the trees too. The trees, the tree extensions on the sides.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
don't take me there. No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even want to spend the night on that set, because you immediately know. And one last thing I want to say is that there is some form of, not controversy, but some sort of debate about how old these characters should be, because mostly they're cast younger, and the lust for power turns into lust for each other, and their relationship is very sexual, which is cool. And I get that, but actually watching Denzel get stepped over one more time brought something so different to it. Like because I've always had a little bit of trouble with, so your decision was you're a little bratty brat and you don't get your way, so you're going to kill him. Like, that's where you go. You're not even going to wait. You're not going to see if it works out with who he picks, but when Denzel walks out of that tent, or Macbeth walks out of that tent, that was his last time that he was going to get stepped over. And when the witches tell him what they tell him, that's what sets that in motion. That's what puts that in the movement towards him killing him.
Yeah.
And
Killing the
she
king,
doesn't help either. And I think she played it
No.
brilliantly, because every single time I've seen it, there's, like a running joke, is your wife being a Lady Macbeth? Not an insult to your wife, not your wife, anybody's wife, in meaning that, like, the expression about there's always a good woman behind a man, well, the opposite is true too sometimes. And that's how they played it in this film, that she was like, yeah, I'm not waiting any longer. You're done.
Yeah.
And here's what you're going to do tonight, now. And I was like, oh, like, I seriously probably would have done it too, because she's so utterly convincing. And then I've always had a problem with the transition, not a problem because I don't know the play that well, but I've always had a little bit of like, that seems very quick, how she goes from so solid and so reserved and so pointed with her motivations to going crazy and throwing herself off of a bridge, or however they depict her killing herself. How did she go so crazy? Was it because of what they did? In this, it made perfect sense, because this was their last time to do and be careful what you wish for, because it wasn't what she was expecting it to be. So I loved it.
No, yeah, me too. Yeah, it was awesome. All right, so what else have you seen?
Well, I'm surprised we didn't start with this, because I saw Licorice Pizza, and I know that you talked about. Yeah, I know that you talked about it on one of our other quick cuts, but I thought maybe we'd start with that because.
Are we gonna do an episode on it?
Yeah, we can. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. I
want to see it again.
I will say this, and we can save it for an episode. Paul Thomas Anderson has not lost any of whatever he is throughout the last 25 years. Money, beautiful wife, 5 kids, a successful father, like you texted me. He is just a step removed from our reality. And I love everything about that. This movie is not, it's a coming of age movie. It's sweet, it's cute, but it is odd and awkward and just, I don't know how anybody thinks these things up. Like, I don't. And what is his obsession with phones? We'll talk.
Yeah, I think he feels a lot. And it's funny because, when you hear him talk, he seems very mannered and very specific in what he wants, but you can tell that he feels a lot in the movies that he chooses to make. So yeah, and that he's like a student of humanity, and that it really interests me. So
yeah, we have to have a podcast, because there's a couple questions that I need answered, or at least need to pose them and maybe ponder them. But his dialogue is so unusual. It is not normal conversation, but it's so normal. But then there's these weird little, weird is not the right word. It's just not the reality I live in. And I love that, because who would have thought this was going to be as quirky as, and that's not even really a good term, as left of center as the rest of his films. Because this one is as left of center as Punch Drunk Love is.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think they don't get together at the, we'll talk about it. I almost spoiled. I stopped, people. I stopped.
Way to go. Yeah. So I saw a movie. I'm preparing to see The Souvenir Part 2 by seeing The Souvenir. That's a Joanna Hogg film that came out a couple of years ago. Have you heard of The Souvenir? Okay.
I think you asked me that one time before,
yes,
but
it
no.
is. Joanna Hogg and Tilda Swinton. You've heard of her. Know each other. Have known each other for a long time, since the early 80s. Joanna Hogg was in film school to be a director, and Tilda Swinton was in school to be an actress. And so they worked together, and over time, they've worked together in the past. And Joanna Hogg wrote this movie, The Souvenir, and it's loosely autobiographical, and she was looking for a star, and somehow Tilda Swinton's daughter, Honor Swinton Byrne, got in front of Joanna Hogg, and she was like, you know what? I think that you would be the right person to star in my movie. And she'd never starred in a movie before.
That seems to
So
be happening a lot lately, by the
speaking of
way.
licorice pizza,
Don't even get me
um,
started. Don't even get me started. I don't even know if jealous is the right word, but okay, go ahead.
so not only did she ask Tilda Swinton's daughter, Honor Swinton Byrne, to star in this movie, but the way that she constructed it, the movie is just about a film school student in the 80s, in the early 80s, and she comes across a guy and they have a relationship. And it's not necessarily all good, but that's the movie. And it's such a well done movie. I loved the feeling, in the same way the Tragedy of Macbeth, it puts you into this location and you get like a visceral feeling from it. I think that the Souvenir puts you in a period of time, and it's very 80s, but it seems like it's today. And I don't know how to be more specific about that, but it feels like a very lived in movie and a very genuine movie. And the things I loved all the little bits and bobs where she's a film student. So she has a Bolex camera, a 16 millimeter camera. There's certain scenes in the film that are shot with that Bolex 16 millimeter camera that are in 16 millimeter, and they're like first person, like whether it's her shooting somebody else and us seeing that, or whether it's us seeing her in a vulnerable moment with that different media. And the feeling is different. So Joanne Hogg's using these 16 millimeter versus digital versus other film, just 35 millimeter film. And so she's kind of bouncing back and forth between those. The way that she uses music, she uses a lot. It's about half opera music and half 80s music, like 80s pop music and British and all of that. But the way that the music is, there's no score. The music is or at least I don't know if there's actually score. I don't think there is, but the most effective music is the music that the characters are playing in their apartment, in their flat, and they're playing it out of their speakers, and then the sound crew is recording that. So just the equalization of the music, it doesn't sound like if you were to listen to it on Spotify or listen to it on YouTube, it sounds different. It might be boomier, but it's what was going on in the environment at that time. It's like the difference between listening to a recording versus going to a concert. Like the music in the concert, it's gonna be the same songs. It's just gonna sound different in a concert because you're there. It's live. It's in front of you, and that's the way that they decided to do this. Even sometimes in movies, it'll like start with that. Start in a car, and
Yeah, I hate
then it'll
that.
transition into
I don't like it.
boom.
Or they
Yeah,
turn it off on the radio and it turns off. I don't like that.
yep.
And one, because
So
it's being utilized way too much.
well, there you go.
I need the illusion that I'm listening to it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And when it's in somebody's headset or they turn off their, iPhone or whatever, I'm like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
First of all, keep that
so
song playing.
well,
you
but see,
know?
it's purposeful. I mean, that's diegetic music. It's music that the character on screen is experiencing and we're experiencing at the same time. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but the way that she did it in this movie was really cool. And I'm sure it's been done like this in other movies where it's like you're listening to the jukebox and then you hear it on a Last Picture Show. I watched it. Same thing. Same exact thing. The Last Picture Show was all like country songs and all run like playing out of people's trucks and playing out of the jukebox. And that was one of the first movies to ever do that, to not have a score, but just to be quote unquote scored by popular music. And
What does diegetic mean?
it means that it is music that is happening inside the story that the character is hearing at the same time
Like
we're
as
hearing
in
it.
digested? Like in, or
It's
what's the,
DIA. Let me see here. Diegetic, DIA. So I don't know what the origin of the word is. Is DIEGETIC. But I'm not sure what the origination of the word is. but that's how you would describe music in a movie that everyone in the movie is hearing. What that scene in The Big Chill, which I still haven't seen, where everybody's dancing around to the record player or whatever. Sam Cooke or whatever. I don't know. But anytime if you go to any movie where they've got a dance going on, and everybody's hearing the music, like that's all diegetic music. But if it's something where they're trying to heighten a scene by playing music that, I mean, any score is going to be a non-diegetic music because they're not hearing the score. So the characters aren't hearing the score, but yeah.
Comes from a Greek word, which I am not even going to try to pronounce, which means narrative.
There you go. Sweet.
So I guess interjected in the narrative.
Yeah, it's a part of the narrative. But yeah, so Souvenir, it uses some really cool tricks, for lack of a better word. There's a lot of two shots where you have two people in the frame, but one person's in one room, the other person's in the other room, and there's a wall between them, just the way that the apartment is set up. There's like a kitchen and a living room, and there's a wall between the kitchen and the living room. They can't see each other. So you get to see both people in the same frame without doing a split screen, without doing a physical split screen. It's just essentially a split screen because it's two people going through their own things, but still on screen together. Like, that was really cool. I mean, there's a lot going on to it. Tilda Swinton is also in the movie playing the main character's mother. So, and of course she's great too, but it's a cool movie. And one of the reasons why I was interested in watching it is that I am trying to watch more movies that are female written, female directed. And this has got a great, reputation. Joanne Hogg has a great reputation as a filmmaker. And then also she came out with a part 2 this year. So it's not rentable yet. It was in theaters for a hot minute, but I'm waiting for that to come out to be able to rent it. But there's some great performances in it, and it's just the thing that I wanted to bring up to you though, that it will just make you go crazy, is that Joanna Hogg wrote out a script, but it was a kind of like skeleton of a script. And then she told Honor Swinton Byrne, okay, I'm going to give you all of my diaries from that time, all the letters, a bunch of letters that I wrote, and scripts of movies that never got made that I wrote during that time of my life. And I want you to read all that stuff. And then we're going to shoot the movie. And you're not going to have a script. You're just going to have to know where the scene's going and react to people. And then, go from point A to point B to point C in this scene, but just go. And the movie felt like that. There were back and forth. There were dialogues between characters that there were pauses, or they were kind of like people were talking over each other, might start to talk at the same time and then would stop, and then they would work it out. And it felt less rote, less specifically. I'm going to say it felt like the anti Aaron Sorkin or the anti David Mamet, where it's just naturalistic, but things are still happening in the scenes. It's just not, you say this, I say that, you say that, I say that. We wait 5 seconds. It's a different feel, but that would have to be nerve-wracking to do something like that.
I can't figure out. By the way, David Mamet writes like that too, by the way. There are
people talking over each other, you mean?
Yeah, and there's punctuation that means you come in here, you start the line here, and he does a lot of that. I don't know how I would feel about that. I have been on stage and moments have happened that things had to be improv. The play I did in North Carolina, Perfect Arrangement, something happened one night and something just came out of me. And then we had to hold for like 2 minutes, it felt like, which is an extremely long time on stage because it was hysterical. And actually, a couple of people commented on that was the best improv they've ever heard. And I, to this day, do not remember, one, thinking it, and two, saying it. Oh. But when I was told I said it, I remembered it. So I don't know how I would feel about that. I have a natural urge to want to improv a lot of times, and I've done well with it. But when push comes to shove, and you're talking about a whole movie, who knows? I mean, with digital, it might be different because I don't have a problem talking, and I don't have a problem vomiting at the mouth, and I don't have a problem continuously saying the same thing over and over again. So with good editor and a good director, maybe it would work out. But I'm not as in fear of that as I am, not fear. I'm not as cautious of that as I would be Aaron Sorkin or David Mamet, because it is so specific and the punctuation is so important. And sometimes your brain just doesn't allow you to remember things in the moment. And so it's really difficult. Now, when you're filming a movie, it would be different because you could you could do another take. On stage, it's daunting because, but I actually have to rehearse the punctuation. I actually have to go, like, you remember the was it Sesame Street where the punctuation guy, and he would do the sounds for each punctuation, and he would do different things for question marks. Do you remember that guy?
I do not remember that. No.
I don't know if it's Sesame Street or not. It might have been Electric Company. It's one of those, I think. Anyway, and I have to rehearse it. Is a period. Is a question mark. It's just something, especially what's the ... What's that?
Ellipsis?
Yes. I definitely have to rehearse that because it's a different line reading than if you're have a period or a question mark or a different punctuation. So it is daunting, but I love things like that. And I love when natural instinctual things happen and organic things happen that the director wasn't even expecting to happen. The other thing is that if it's based on her life, it must have been powerful to see somebody interpret it without her telling her what she wanted from the scene. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, this is the basic structure of what I need from the narrative, but it must have been really powerful because was it similar to how she reacted in real life? And if it was, can you imagine? Like, it must have been powerful. Just thinking about it makes me choke up a little bit.
But yeah, you should check it out. I think you'd enjoy it. I mean, well, enjoy is the wrong word. I think you would appreciate it.
Well, since we're talking about female driven movies, I know we're going to do a podcast on it, but I rewatched The Power of the Dog.
Ooh, that's what I'm doing
James
next week.
Campion.
Yeah.
And have you seen it already?
Oh yeah, I've seen it, and I can't wait to rewatch it. Yeah.
Wait till you rewatch it. It's very interesting, and we're going to talk about it, so we won't say much now. But it's very interesting what I took in and what I missed, and how impactful both of those were. Like when I took in the first time I saw it, I got it all, and I'm as blown away by this film as everybody has been. Yeah, it's a beautiful movie. But when the things I missed, I was like, oh, whoa. And I will say this, and we're going to talk about it, but I want to say this. I have wanted, and I should have texted you, Cody Smith McPhee. Is that his McPhee?
Yeah.
Yes, McPhee. He is everywhere. Yeah. Nominated for supporting actor for everything. He's won a ton of awards. But Jesse Plemons puts in the Woody Harrelson performance of the movie. Do you get that reference? From 3 Billboards. Remember, everybody's talking about Sam Rockwell, and you and I were talking about Woody Harrelson, and you were like, well, I'm not so sure he's going to get nominated. I was like, he will be nominated. And sure enough, he did. And lo and behold, Jesse Plemons was just nominated for the BAFTA. So I'm happy people are recognizing what he does in that movie. And we can talk about it later.
Well, I've started to just have a little piece of paper and pen next to me when I watch a movie. And when I watch it the first time, I don't write very much, but like with Power of the Dog the second time, I'm sure I'm going to be writing down a lot. But because I think of things and then I want to have I don't want to get out my phone and then, I'm obviously would never do this in a movie theater, but if it's movies that I'm watching here at the house, then I will, try to figure out a way to jot something down really quickly. It might even just be a word or 2 words, but it's something that jogs my memory for when I'm thinking about it. And it helps because there's things that I might notice. And a lot of times it's technical stuff that I notice and I want to either go back and figure out 1, how they did it, or 2, why that jumped out to me. And then at the same time, I can be so focused on something technical that I miss something narratively. And so that's why watching something a second time really helps me out, because I can totally gloss over really, really important character parts. And
We are the polar opposite. I get
yeah.
so emotionally involved that I miss some stuff technically that
Mm,
and I believe the technical adds to the emotion and the emotion adds to the technical, obviously.
yeah.
It's a
Ooh,
technical medium.
I have a
But that's
question
interesting
for you.
that that's the
Yeah.
opposite of what we do. That's fascinating to me.
Did you know I watched Mass, by the way, and did you notice the aspect ratio change in that movie?
No. When they first sit down?
Nope.
No, I did. At the end, when you
It's
realize what?
close to the end. Close to the end. But yeah. We're
Oh,
not giving anything away for Mass.
when she comes
We
through the.
probably don't want to give anything away for Mass. I don't know, but
Yeah, spoilers alert! Alert! If you haven't seen Mass, see it, see it, see it. Watch it. Don't listen to us.
yeah, it's
Come back to
basically the
us.
beginning of the third act is when the aspect ratio changes. It goes from a regular 1:8:5 to the CinemaScope 2:3:9. So it goes from a taller frame to a much wider and uh, thinner frame. So yeah.
Because they've exposed themselves and now they're more open to whatever the ideas of other people are.
I don't know. The only thing I noticed is that at the beginning of the film, when they sit down, it's four people sitting down at a table talking about an event. And so when they're sitting down at the beginning of the film, they're all around a table. And during that third act, they spread, they go to
Yeah.
corners
Yeah,
of
Martha
the room.
Plimpton's in the right-hand corner,
And
right.
so it allows you to have a four shot where you've got someone in the extreme foreground and someone in the extreme background, and then two people in the middle, like at the table, and they're all in the frame. And it fills the frame a lot better with that 2:3:4, with that CinemaScope aspect ratio versus the other aspect ratio. So
So real quick, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No. That to me, I was like, where is he going with this? When I saw it change, because it fades to black and it fades back up from black, and the aspect ratio has changed. So I was like, why? What is the point? Like, I kind of got mad, and I was like, what is he trying to do? And then it works. So
So how did
good
you
on
feel
him.
about the film?
It's such a tough subject matter that I kind of shut off emotionally. And so I
Can I have some of that? That's where I want to be more like you. I can't sometimes breathe. Like I can't breathe sometimes. I never pause a film to look at my phone. I try not to do that. It's a lot easier when you're watching Euphoria or Ozark or any of that stuff. I can come out of it and go back into it because it's episodic TV, so you can watch one episode and then it's full encompassing that story for just that episode. But there are some times where I cannot catch my breath. And in particular, in the beginning of that film, the tension is it's so much. And Martha Plimpton and the way that her side of her mouth kind of quivers just a little bit in the beginning of the film. And I was like, oh no.
Well, it's
no.
like you're compressing a spring that whole first, hour of that movie.
It's intense.
And you're just waiting for it to just explode. And so that's what Fran Kranz does a really good job of. And all the actors are able to just, I was amazed that they, Ann Dowd was nominated for a BAFTA.
Yay! Recognition.
Which is awesome.
I'm so glad. I don't care who gets recognized. See this movie.
Yes,
because it's the movie that I'm hoping for an original screenplay, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
And so, she sent out a really nice note that you forwarded on to me from Twitter, I guess. But just kind of talking about that and just talking about the subject matter of the film and how it brings people together that may not want to come together, and it offers a space for people to talk things out. And so it was eye-opening, and it was also challenging, but yeah.
I mentioned not being able to watch Schindler's List again, and that's obviously for that movie it's just hard to watch, and I think I've seen it twice. And I just didn't want to go through those emotions again. I just didn't. I was being selfish. I wanted to remember, and it's a subject that needs to be remembered and needs to be respected, but I just couldn't do it. Mass keeps calling me. It keeps calling me back. And it's as tough to me as something like Schindler's List because it's so raw. All the emotions are so raw. And every one of those actors are so brave because they're not hiding behind anything. They're not hiding behind dialects or accents or wigs or makeup or anything. Not that that really matters anyway, but the emotional integrity that they all bring to it was powerful to me. And then I saw some criticism, and we talked about this briefly, about how this was sort of contrived, that this would probably never happen. But I was like, that's the point. How many people who are in this circumstances, if you want to, the two couples, Martha Plimpton, Jason Isaac, Ann Dowd, and Richard Burney, Reed Burney, thank you. I knew I got it wrong as soon as I said it. They come from two different places, and how many of people in real life are in those places who would like to come together and have that conversation and never can? So yes, it's contrived. It's a movie. It's like it's automatically contrived.
So is Lord of the Rings.
Right. That's exactly what I said. That's almost verbatim what I said. I don't think I used Lord of the Rings as I said so is the Matrix. I said the same thing. But the amount of how many people who are in that circumstances in real life who see this movie are going to have a cathartic effect and feel as if they have had this conversation. And so that was powerful. And I didn't understand the opening image of the field and the little
string tied on the.
Yeah, yep. I didn't get it. And then the end, I was like, oh. I was sort of thinking it didn't mean anything. But then when you figure out what it is, you're like, oh no. I mean, so good to the last drop. I mean, it's just that last shot is as powerful as anything that happened. It's definitely in my top 10 of the year, and it's been on everybody's mind. And I've had many nights looking on Twitter about what the BAFTAs are going to do, what the Oscars are going to do, and next best picture podcast, they do a thing if I could vote for the Oscars, and one guy has all four of them on his list, and I was like, your supporting character category is perfect. Sent, because they really are amazing. But anyway, yeah
wow. So speaking of the BAFTAs, they did just come out today, and I wanted to give you your platform here to give me one shocking prediction for the Oscar nominations next week. Now that you know what the BAFTA nominations are. So some people may be like, oh, well, Spencer was shut out, so there's definitely not going to be any Oscar love for Kristen Stewart. And then maybe your shocker prediction is that she's going to get a nomination. But I'm talking like deep cut your shocker prediction.
Okay, you know what? I can't see it.
Really?
I can't. I've been trying to, and that's making me not able to see it. I'm wishing for more. Okay, I'm wishing for something like Aaron Taylor Johnson, Michael Shannon. Remember that? Remember Aaron Taylor?
Nocturnal Animals?
Yes. Remember Aaron Taylor Johnson got the Golden Globe and got all the praise, and I kept saying, I don't know, Michael Shannon's he's crazy in that. He's good. And then that's what happened.
Yeah.
I am not wanting to say it out loud because sometimes it doesn't come true when I say it out loud, but
you need like a sealed envelope.
Yes, I do. I used to mail things to myself to prove that it was because no one believes me. You didn't believe me when we first started this. You thought I was weird, and then it started happening over and over again. You're like, and then like the third year, and you're like, didn't you say that? And I was like, yes. And then when it was solidified was Olivia Colman, because remember when we were talking about The Favorite, I was like, she's going to win the Oscar. You were like, what? I don't even think she'll be nominated. And I was like, the Rabbits. And then the Glenn Close narrative happened, and I was like, nope. And just like 1917, I refuse to give myself over to 1917. I'm not doing it. Parasite is going straight down. It's not going to win all of them, but it's going to win most of them. And boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
I can say this. I'm shocked that Nicole Kidman, Olivia Colman, Kristen Stewart weren't nominated for the BAFTA. I'm shocked. But they have this new thing where they're like, everybody's voting, and then it's going to a jury, and then the jury is deciding. I don't really understand the rules. And I can't remember if Jessica Chastain was nominated or not, but
No.
I think she was not. See, that's odd. All four of them are front runners. I think Kristen Stewart will be nominated. I think people will be relieved. I think if there's a shock in the Best Actress category, it's going to be Nicole Kidman not being nominated. And I think Frances McDormand is going to be the surprise Best Actress nomination. I don't know why people are not talking about
actress
her.
or supporting actor. Would they try to put her as supporting actress?
Well, she's campaigning, or they campaigned her in Best Actress.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Okay.
But there's that whole debate about screen time and whether or not blah, blah, blah. Anthony Hopkins is in 23 minutes of Silence of the Lamb, and he was the best actor that year because you could not do that film without him. Anyway, I'm hoping for certain things, but nothing. There's nothing that's gonna, like Woody Harrelson. I knew for certain he was going to be nominated, and people were like, Sam Rockwell. Nope, Woody Harrelson. So I can't see it right now. I'm touched that you want me to do it, but I have some thoughts, but nothing is solid. I would like to see Mass be original screenplay. I think Licorice Pizza is going to do not as well as it did at the BAFTAs. I don't think he'll be nominated, even though he was DGA, Paul Thomas Anderson. There's this thing with Bradley Cooper that I don't quite understand. He's great in the two scenes that he's in, but that's a weird nomination.
Wait,
to me
did he get nominated?
Yeah, he didn't for the BAFTA, but everybody's for the SAG he did.
Oh, okay, but not for the BAFTA. Okay, got it. Yeah, all right.
No, not for the BAFTA. But that said, Sam Rockwell in Vice as George W. Bush. Remember, I said I think he's Oscar worthy, and you're like, he's in two scenes, and I was and then he ended up getting nominated. So I think. I can't remember if Joel Cohen was nominated for the DGA. I can't remember if he was or not. I think he's going to be in there. I think, what's the lady from Teton? What's the French lady?
Julia Ducournau. She got nominated.
Yes, and I think she might be the surprise directing nomination because I'm not sure that Jane Campion is going to be the only female. Watch out for Maggie Gyllenhaal with adapted screenplay. And also, watch out for Tessa Thompson in Passing. You remember what I said? Do you remember me saying? And they're both nominated for BAFTAs.
Ruth Negga is nominated? Okay.
Yes, they are.
All right.
And I would not be surprised because luckily, this is a very diverse crowd. And we have two possible African-American men being nominated in Best Actor, right? Denzel Washington and Will Smith. So good. Yay. Both will deserve it if they are nominated. There is not a lead female of any ethnicity that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head that has been front running for the Oscar. I think Tessa Thompson might all of a sudden, and I swear we can go back and listen to it because I said something along the lines of they're going to quietly go down a path and all of a sudden show up. And they have been showing up left and right. Okay, so here's my thing. I'm going to say it because I want to, and then we'll leave it alone. I will be happy for Ann Dowd, supremely happy for her. That last scene, it's Oscar worthy. But I'm hoping it's a Michael Shannon thing, and it's Martha Plimpton who gets nominated. That will make me the happiest. Oh, and didn't I say something about Mike? Feist, right? Yeah, I don't know how. I think it's Feist.
Feist, yeah, it's Feist.
He was just nominated for the BAFTA, and I think he's going to be nominated for the Oscar too, and he will deserve it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think I like all the love for CODA. That's such a great movie. And
I was just getting ready to mention. Let's talk about that real quick because I just watched that myself. And you know what? I wrote it down in a tweet, and I'm going to say it publicly. You need to warn me When you see a movie like that, you know damn well how that movie was going to affect me. And you never said a word. You said you saw that movie and nothing. You didn't say, hey, Paul, be careful. Hey, Paul, you're going to be a puddle of tears. Hey, Paul, watch out. Nothing.
Yep.
And I was.
Those movies, they get me. Anything when you involve emotions and music, like
Oh my
that's like
goodness.
music in the movie, like it's rough for me to get through it without, like, tying that stuff together. And that's why, like, the end of uh uh A Star Is Born is, the newest one. That was rough for me. The
A
and
lot of
so
people.
yeah, and so that right there is like, that's, if you want to get me, you just add an amazing musical scene at the end of your movie.
So I'm going to start with this. So David Bowie is and should be in every movie
He is in
musically.
every movie.
He's in Licorice Pizza.
Licorice Pizza. I mean, he
And now,
is the trailers. He's in a bunch of the new Lightyear trailer
yeah,
has Starman in it, which is
yeah,
like,
of course it does.
golly, come on.
Of course it does. And they have been circulating the same 2 or 3 songs and they need to move on. And now Joni Mitchell needs to be in every movie too. So if Joni Mitchell and David Bowie aren't in your movie, I'm not coming to it. I'm not going to pay for it. Okay, CODA. I don't understand this film because there's nothing new. There's nothing original. There's nothing you don't see coming a mile away. There's nothing that can't dip into sentimentality instead of true emotions. There's nothing that is out of the ordinary. She has a struggle in her family. She struggles with this boy at school. They eventually, spoilers, they eventually get together. There are no spoilers because you know
No,
exactly where this movie is going.
it's like an
But
after school special type thing.
100%. I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to say something that might come across as insulting. But my
It's
point
not.
is this. My point is this. What doesn't work about it? Every single tone, every single moment rings true, is honest, is organic, is genuine, but there's nothing new about it. Nothing. When they go up into the balcony at the end, I was like, yep. But when she starts to sign the song, I was like, oh no. You gotta be kidding me. And the struggle with the family and the family business, and then figuring out how that's going to work, and then seeing the scene with the new worker and her laughing about it. There's nothing original about it. But, and what is the director's name? Do you have that?
Oh yeah, I do not, but I will.
Um,
Go on.
yes. The moments that were chosen.
By Sean Hader. Sion, yes.
What she chose to film, the story, like I said, is nothing out of the ordinary. But the way that she brought the moments together and the emotional impact of the moments, that scene at the end when she's singing and he is holding her throat is powerful.
Mm.
And the performances are powerful. And what's the young actress's name? Amelia Jones? Is that her
Mhm.
name? Okay. I was hoping to, once again, there were 3 different things I was hoping would happen before the BAFTAs. And I was hoping to say, watch out for her. She might be the surprise Oscar nomination because I was watching it going, there's nothing she didn't do right. Nothing she didn't do right. And I would say that about the film.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is right. Everything
So,
is
yeah.
perfect for the moment that they wanted.
Yeah.
And she was nominated for the BAFTA.
There you go. I mean, the movie is what it is, and it's not trying to be anything that it's not.
It's
So,
unapologetically itself.
yeah. And genuine. It's a great movie. It's on Apple
I hope
TV.
to see more. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see more. And for whatever reason, CODA came out a while ago.
Yep.
And disappeared. And then all of a sudden, and somebody on Twitter was like, is CODA getting love like the father did at the last minute? And I tweeted, yes, because it's just, you can't fault it. You just cannot fault it because you're exactly right. It is just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is beautiful. And I was like, I'm not going to cry when she's leaving for college. I'm not going to cry at this moment. And I didn't, but I was already a ball of tears anyway because of the last two scenes with the
Mm.
father and then the audition. And I mean, it could have gone so bad. I can play it for you. The teacher all of a sudden shows up to the audition to play the music that she didn't bring, and the pianist doesn't know that song. I mean, come on, it's the most
Mm.
famous Joni Mitchell song ever. So it could have all gone wrong, but it didn't. And then I tweeted, if there was an Oscar for a cover song, this would win this year. And you
Mm.
said that you wish that they had a
Well,
musical.
I wish they had. So the person who is responsible for picking songs, now in some cases, if it's Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson, like they may be picking their own songs, or James Gunn, or somebody who's like, when they're writing the script, they know they want this song to play here and that song to play there. But in a lot of cases, in a lot of productions, there's someone who is the music supervisor, and it's the person who is responsible for finding a song that fits this particular, if you're using popular music in your film, finding a song that fits this particular scene or this particular feeling, and then bringing that to the director or whoever, and then going forward with that and clearing all the rights and all that stuff. So that's a difficult job, but it's there's some movies that are just so, the music is so perfectly placed. I think Licorice Pizza is pretty darn close, but where the music is so perfectly placed that it feels like it needs recognition. I don't know. And the score gets recognition, and it's a collaborative effort. It's a composer working with the director to make sure that the score fits those particular instances, and they adjust the length of scenes, and the score gets adjusted, and it's a back and forth. And I think that the same thing should be for pre-recorded music. Choosing the choosing of the pre-recorded music. You're not generating the content, but you're picking. It's kind of like being an editor, I guess. It's being the music editor.
Well, I'm a little surprised there's not, because the stunt man
Yeah,
guild and union want recognition like that,
sure.
but it's an achievement award based on science and technology and all that other stuff. It's not just an acting award. It's not just a overall film award. So why not? They have a ceremony the night before
Mm-hmm.
giving out special technical Oscars, and sometimes they have done some of the major, well, less major, but some of the
Yeah.
ones they usually do on the show, they usually have done the night before. So why not? You're going to have a makeup. Why not have a casting director Oscar, or at least an award that's awarded by the Academy? And
Mm-hmm.
why not have this? Because what's the difference between a person who puts all the music together to create an atmosphere that, and this might be, I don't know if it's an insult, but I'm going to say it anyway. But yes, I know the production designer designs things and then creates things, but a lot of times the production designer pulls from different places to make it look like Santa Monica Boulevard or wherever. And it's not any kind of design. It's just like put together. Of course, they design it and then put it
Mm-hmm.
together, but it's not like built or whatever. So, what's the difference between that and finding the right amount of cars and the right type of cars and the right, because Licorice Pizza does a great job of that too.
Mm-hmm.
That decade they got is amazing, because I was raised in the 70s, and that is the 70s. It feels just like it, icky, in the best way. Um, so what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, costumes
Yeah.
are sometimes, most costumes that win Oscars are designed and then built. I get that. But why isn't there a costume design that is based on pulling from, your
Mm-hmm.
warehouse or wherever you pull it from, or shopping or whatever? Why isn't that something?
Sure.
Why isn't this thing with the songs
I
at
don't know.
least acknowledge, give them a damn
It's a
certificate? How hard is
Yeah,
that?
it's an integral part of a lot of films, and
Hands
so
down.
yeah, it's yeah. But
Speaking of the big chill,
there you go. All right. You got anything else?
No, I don't know if we talked about The Tender Bar, but I think people need to see it with Ben Affleck. He's wonderful in it. And you and I have talked about The Eyes of Tammy Faye, but I'm not sure we talked about it on the podcast. But I definitely
Mm,
think Jessica Chastain is amazing. Andrew
she's great.
Garfield was amazing. And Andrew Garfield wasn't nominated for the BAFTA for Tick, Tick, Boom. Don't understand
Mm,
it. So whatever they're doing over there, good for them. They got a lot of diversity and a lot of different people this year, but I don't understand what's going on. And that's good. But it seems also kind of a little suspicious that the BAFTAs came out the day after Oscar voting was closed.
hmm.
Find that interesting
Yeah.
because how would have it influenced it? And actually, I think it would have been a good thing because Drive My Car's all over that list.
Yeah.
Actors from different movies I've never even heard of are all over that list, and that's the way it should be. So, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, worth seeing, touching. I liked it, and I hope she's taken seriously. I hope she becomes the front runner if she's nominated because and of course the makeup probably will for obvious reasons, but
Hmm.
she puts in a really soul-stirring, believable performance. Jessica Chastain, him
Yeah.
too, but I'm hoping for him for Tick Tick Boom. So
Yep.
we'll see.
All right. Well, great. Okay. Well, if you want to check us out on the web, you can go to actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can also find us on Twitter @actorengineer, and we'll see you next time.